Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Capacity Building Center for States Introduction to the Building Financial Capability Conference Call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Christy Stankovich. Please go ahead.
Hi, and welcome to this afternoon's or this morning's webinar. I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items with the GoToWebinar piece. If you'd like to ask a question at any time, you may enter that in the questions feature on your right-hand side of the screen, and we'll address those questions at the end of the Q&A session. If you have any technical difficulty, please email myself or Meredith Pachilli at icfi.com. I'd like to turn over today's presentation to Matthew Hudson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Hudson. I'm a Program Area Manager with Capacity Building Center for State. I'm going to give everyone just a quick kind of overview of what we'll be doing today, and followed by a little bit of information about the center, and then we'll turn it to our presenters. So first, just to give you a little bit of an overview, we'll learn more about using the Building Financial Capability Guide for youth transitioning out of foster care. We'll explore how to effectively utilize the Building Financial Capability, a planning guide for integrated services, to design, integrate, and implement financial capability services into existing programs to build the financial capability of youth ages 16 to 21. Next slide. For the agenda, we'll be doing some introduction, and then we will be doing an overview of the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative, followed by an overview of the Financial Capability Planning Guide. Then we'll do a brief discussion about the financial capability and interaction with child welfare population, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. So going into introduction, as I mentioned myself, I'm a Program Area Manager for Youth Development with the Center for States. We also have Corey Hadamer, who's the Associate Director of Savings and Financial Capability for the Corporation for Enterprise Development. And then we also have Lynn Wright, who is one of the Program Area Advisors for the Youth Development Area. And next, so the webinar objectives, our goal is that after this webinar, participants will be able to use the guide to integrate services into existing programs to help youth build financial capability. And then also we would like for participants to be able to ultimately define financial capability, brainstorm financial capability service providers, share experiences providing financial capability services, discuss the financial priorities of youth, identify services that may help youth build financial capability, and determine how they can use the guide to provide financial capability services to their youth. And so now that we've talked a little bit about what we'd like to do on today's webinar, I'd like to give everyone just a little bit more information about the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative and the Center for States. So, about the collaborative, in October of 2014, ICF International was awarded a contract by the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Children's Bureau, to establish the new Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative. Next slide. The Center for States, the Center for Tribes, and the Center for Courts are partners who together form the Capacity Building Collaborative that consolidates services that previously had been provided by national child welfare resource centers. This consolidation increases coordination, leverages resources, and provides for more strategic service provision. Next slide. Our goal is to work with partners and jurisdictions to support capacity building to lead to improved outcomes for children and families. Next slide. We do this by partnering with states, territories, tribes, and courts to identify, design, and implement innovative solutions that meet the unique needs of each jurisdiction. So getting more into detail about specifically the Center for States, which is, again, where Ben and I are with, and that focus specifically on state child welfare agencies. The Center for States serves state and territorial public child welfare agencies in Title 4E waiver demonstration jurisdictions. ICF International supports the Center for States, where Maggie Bishop is the project director. You might recognize ICF from our work with the Child Welfare Information Gateway, as ICF has a long history of working on technical assistance contracts with the Children's Bureau as well as other government agencies. The Center for States aims to provide evidence-based capacity-building support services that will improve performance and support states and territories in effectively initiating, implementing, and sustaining change and innovation. To achieve this goal, we work with our partners to create and deliver coordinated, inclusive, and well-informed capacity-building services. So now that I've given a brief overview of the collaborative and our Center for States, I'd like to turn it over to Corey Hadamer.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for joining today. As Matt mentioned, I work for CFED, which is a national nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C., and I'm going to start out today by defining what we mean when we say the term financial capability. So financial capability is more than just financial education. It includes knowledge, but it also includes the skills that people need to use that knowledge and the access to resources that individuals need to be able to manage their financial resources effectively. Financial capability is a critical step towards financial security, and many people, regardless of socioeconomic background, may lack one or more factors of this equation, including the youth that you're working with. Organizations use a range of different approaches and services to help the clients they're working with build financial capability. We've organized all of those different services into 10 categories, and so I'm going to talk through those 10 services now. Financial education includes workshops and classes on financial topics that are usually offered in either a series of sessions or standalone workshops. Financial coaching includes one-on-one interactions that really focus on helping youth or clients build financial capability and achieve their different financial goals. Financial counseling is very similar to coaching in that it's provided in a one-on-one setting, but the interactions with youth are really more focused on solving immediate financial issues. Credit counseling includes assistance organizing, prioritizing, or paying down debt. It also includes helping participants monitor and manage their different credit. Credit building involves providing access to products or programs that help participants build or rebuild credit. Access to safe and affordable financial products means providing access to or just encouraging the use of financial products that are low cost, convenient, and transparent. In the context of youth, this means making sure that financial products are both safe and low cost and available to youth. Free tax preparation assistance includes helping lower-income individuals prepare their taxes at no cost, and so it includes volunteer income tax assistance, also known as VITA, and it also includes promoting the Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC. Access to federal and state benefits involves screening participants for benefits eligibility and providing assistance in accessing benefits that include food stamps, child care, or transportation subsidies that they might need. Incentivized savings programs work with participants to save for their goals and provide savings incentives that participants can use for an asset purchase or another expense. So individual development account programs and other matched savings programs fall into this category. Asset ownership programs support participants to build or maintain assets, such as retirement savings, a small business, a home, a vehicle, or post-secondary education for either themselves or in some cases for their children. So let's look at a quick poll question about your experience providing some or all of these financial capability services. So the poll is going to be launched, and the question is, has your state or agency begun providing some of these financial capability services to youth? And the response options are yes, we're providing them, or no, we're not providing them at this moment. We'll give everyone a little bit of time to respond, and then we'll be able to see the poll results up on the screen. All right, so it looks like 78% of you are already providing financial capability services, which is great. That's a really high number. And then 22% of you aren't doing it at this moment, which is totally fine. During the rest of the webinar, I'm going to talk through some of the different strategies for bringing financial capability services into your existing programs for youth, and talk about different ways that you can connect your clients to those services, or connecting the youth you're working with to those services. So for more than a decade, we've seen growing interest in experimentation with a concept called integration, which really means incorporating financial capability discussions, resources, and tools directly into other existing programs. And so those can include housing programs, workforce development programs, community health centers, and more. And so in this context, we're specifically defining integration as intentionally incorporating financial capability services into an existing program or service in which the client already participates. And ideally, those services are provided at a time when the services are relevant and accessible. So stated simply, integration means meeting people where they are, both in terms of their financial lives as well as when they're interacting with your organization. And we've seen a lot of different organizations see improved outcomes in their other programs because they incorporated financial capability services into them. And so by looking at the financial barriers that their different program participants were facing, they were able to address those barriers and both improve clients' financial capability, but also improve their outcomes in other areas. So over the past few years, we've looked at these organizations who are doing some of this integration work to figure out how they're doing it, what some of the approaches look like. And what we've learned is that the different approaches and strategies generally fall into one of three categories. The first is refer, which means referring your participants to other organizations, partnering with other organizations to bring services on site so that your participants can easily access them, or what we call a do-it-yourself or DIY approach, which just means you're building internal capacity to provide financial capability services on site. So I'll describe each of these integration options more in depth and then discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each. So we'll start by talking about referrals. A referral approach involves finding organizations that provide services that your participants need and then setting up a process for referring your participants to those services. And so the advantage of this approach is that it's less resource-intensive for your organization since it relies on the capacity of other organizations. But some of the disadvantages are that participants have to travel to another location, which can limit their take-up of services. Maybe they're not able to follow through. Maybe the referral partners have different goals and outcomes, or their services might not be a good fit for your participants. And so if you're working specifically with youth who are transitioning out of care, they have specific needs and perspectives that other organizations who don't work with that population might not be able to speak to. And so that kind of vetting process to find good referral agencies is really important. So the second approach then is partner. And so that really just means basically working with another organization to deliver financial capability services in either one convenient location or even sometimes with a shared brand. The advantage here is that you can maximize the strengths of multiple organizations, and you avoid having participants travel to multiple locations because you're bringing all the services to one site. Some of the trade-offs are that partnerships involve compromise. I'm sure a lot of you are already partnering with different organizations, and you know that you really have to give up some autonomy in terms of how services are provided. And you also have to invest a significant amount of time to establish partnerships, especially in working out specifics of how you'll coordinate services together. And then the third approach is do-it-yourself, or DIY. So this is building internal capacity to embed financial capability services into your existing programs. So maybe training some caseworkers to do financial coaching or some of that one-on-one work with clients, or to lead financial education workshops for youth. And the advantages of this approach are that you have complete control over making sure that the goals and activities of these services really contribute to your organizational mission. They really meet participants where they are, and you get to provide services in one location, which hopefully reduces the likelihood that participants will drop off between services if you send them out to another location. A disadvantage of this approach is that it's pretty resource-intensive. Building internal capacity requires leadership buy-in, often requires funding, and it requires training and support for staff who are going to be providing the services, which can take time to establish and provide a strain on other services if it's really not well aligned. So what we've seen most often is that organizations use a blended approach. And so they use a variety and combination of these integration approaches based on both internal capacity to provide services, the specific tailoring that services need to exhibit for participants, and then also based on external capacity. So maybe you want to send clients to another organization, but there aren't any other organizations who provide the service in your community. And so you realize in order to connect clients with that service, you really need to do some internal capacity building. So what this can look like, maybe you have a DIY approach in which case managers can pull and review credit reports for participants. But then when you want to set up a financial product, such as a checking account or a savings account, case managers refer them out to a local credit union who has starter checking accounts that really have low fees and are easy to open. And then they partner with another organization to bring tailored youth financial education workshops on site. And so it's really a blended approach where participants are able to access multiple services, but they're really provided in different ways depending on the capacity of different service providers. So the guide is kind of the focus of this webinar, and really what it is an interactive resource that organizations can use to design financial capability services and figure out how to integrate them into existing programs. And so it provides a step-by-step process for developing a plan for integrating financial capability services into existing programs. It contains 13 field-tested tools for each step of the planning process. And really, we design these tools to be practical and adaptable so that you can change them to suit your needs. And we developed them alongside organizations in the field so that we can make sure they really aligned with what organizations were experiencing and what they wanted to achieve through their work. A couple other notes about what the guide is. It's an organization-level resource, so it's really not for clients, it's not for frontline staff, it's for directors and managers involved in planning and program design. And so we really recommend it for program directors, program managers, and we advise those directors and managers to form planning teams that can engage different stakeholders. So conducting this kind of in-depth planning process can be really intensive for one person, and so hopefully and a person taking on this or an organization taking on this process is able to form a planning team that engages leadership, frontline staff, and different thought partners who can inform the process along the way. So let's take a closer look at the guide itself. The guide is specifically called Building Financial Capability, a planning guide for integrated services. If you want to download it, you can go to the link on your screen. One of the handouts that's available in the control panel on your right is a 2-pager that describes the planning guide that also has a link to where you can download it yourself. So I'm going to walk through the guide now to give you a better sense of how you can use it to figure out which services will help your clients build financial capability and develop a plan for integrating them effectively. So on your screen is a picture of the table of contents from the guide. And so you can see that the heart of the guide is its 4 sections and 13 tools. Great. So in each of the sections, you're going to collect information so that you can make a specific decision. And so the decision you make in Section 1 is what financial capability services you should provide to help your participants build financial capability. And so the information you need to make this decision is how do my clients manage their finances now? What financial outcomes matter to my program participants? And then given how participants manage their finances now and what their goals are, what are the services that will help them achieve this? And so in Tool 1, it's basically a comprehensive list of questions and a place to organize information about different aspects of participants' financial capability. So it's looking at how they're managing money, how they're managing credit, whether or not they have any debts, looking at any access or lack of access to financial products they have, and just general financial knowledge and consumer protections. Tool 2 helps you list out the different outcomes that might matter. And then Tool 3 helps you assess and put together a theory of change. And actually, if you could go back one slide. So after you decide in Section 1 which services you're going to provide, you move to Section 2, which is called Building the Team. So there are 4 different tools in this section. The first, Tool 4, assesses your in-house capacity to provide different services. Tool 5 is where you can create an inventory of financial capability service providers. So it has information about where you can find other organizations who might be able to provide this service and gives you a table where you can organize information about those organizations. Tool 6 is an assessment of community service providers. So after you develop that list or inventory in Tool 5, you can use the questionnaire that's in Tool 6 to really assess whether or not other organizations' services are a good fit for your clients. So are they tailored to meet the needs of youth? Are they available at times and locations that work for them? And then does this organization have the capacity to serve your participants well? And then Tool 7 here in Section 2 is where all of it comes together, where you decide who will deliver services. So you decide what will we provide in-house versus what will we refer participants out to receive versus what will we partner with another organization to provide. In Section 3, there are 5 different tools you can use. And so really the goal of this section is to answer the question of how the services will be integrated. So Section 1 is what are the services? Section 2 is who's going to provide them, and Section 3 is how they'll be provided. And so you'll gather information in Tool 8 about how you currently interact with participants by mapping out the current program workflow, and you'll use that information to identify what are the right touch points when financial capability services are relevant to use, and where are they already interacting with your organization where it might make sense for them to receive another service. Tools 9, 10, and 11 all do a similar function, so they're planning tools. So Tool 9 is if you chose a referral approach, you're going to refer your participants out to another organization. It maps out a step-by-step plan that you can use with that referral receiving organization to determine how clients or participants will receive those services and how you'll make sure that there's a warm handoff in place. Tool 10 is a partnership plan. So if you decided to partner with another organization to provide financial capability services, you can use this Tool 10 to really sit down and map out all the specifics of your partnership and potentially use that to develop an MOU that'll detail how services will be provided. Tool 11 is a DIY plan. So if you decide to build internal capacity to provide financial capability services, you can use Tool 11 to figure out where do we need to build capacity, what kind of training does staff need, what kind of additional and ongoing support might they need, and then where do we need to either fundraise or leverage existing funding to provide services. And then Tool 12 is really where everything comes together. And so it's the capstone or summary tool for the entire guide and for this section. And so it's a logic model that basically maps out this is what we're going to do and what we're going to provide, and these are the outcomes we anticipate will result from these different services and activities. And then the final section in the guide is the cross-cutting section on making the case. And we really call this the cross-cutting section because you can use this at any point in the planning process. And really the question you're answering here is how can we convince key stakeholders to support this work? So that includes funders, organizational leadership, frontline staff, clients, policymakers, et cetera. And so it helps you think through how can we present the information about our financial capability services and plans in a way that will resonate with this audience and encourage them to support our program in whatever way is appropriate. So then looking at some of the other sections of the guide, I mentioned earlier that this is an interactive guide, and so there's this navigation bar on the right side of your screen that you can click at any point, and you can jump around into different sections and tools in the guide. So if I click here on Section 1, I'm going to jump ahead to the first page of Section 1. And from there, you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen, Tool 1, 2, and 3 pop out. And so you can navigate to each of those different tools. The beginning of each section has information that you might need to complete the tools and also kind of just a summary and description of how you complete the tools. And if you click here on Tool 1 on the right-hand side, you'll jump to the first page of Tool 1, which includes instructions for completing the tools, a list of documents or just knowledge you might need to complete the tool, and then what's circled here on your screen is a list of the blank tools that you could complete and where you can download them. So we have the blank tool available in Microsoft Word format so that you can make any sort of edits to language or formatting that you want. We have a blank tool in fillable PDF format, so you can download that, enter whatever information you want to, and then save it or share it with others. And then we have a filled-in example. And so throughout the planning guide, we have a filled-in example from the perspective of a fictional agency that we developed based on our work with other organizations. And so it walks through the process that this fictional organization, Hope Community Action Agency, went through to design a financial capability integration project, both for their Head Start parents and for youth who are in transitional supportive housing. And so you can always reference those filled-in examples as an example of what the completed tools could look like. All right, so there's a home button on the bottom right hand of your screen, and so if you click on this home icon at any point in the guide, it'll take you back to this table of contents where we started. So you can click on any of the different sections you want to access. And so if we look at the top, the first 4 sections of the guide, we've got a foreword, which is written by Jeannie Chaffin, the Director of the Office of Community Services, who supported the development of this guide. Got an executive summary, which is really written for executives. It's a summary of what financial capability is, what financial capability integration is, some of the research that supports doing this work, and then a description of what the guide is. And so if you're wanting to do this work and need to share with your leadership or with your board what this could look like, you can just pull out this executive summary and share it with them. The About Financial Capability Integration section has specific information about what we mean when we talk about financial capability and integration, which I've talked about today, but also has links to different research studies that have been done that show some of the preliminary research into the outcomes that can result from this type of work. And then we have a section on how to use the guides. If you're not real sure where to start or not really sure how to approach the guide, you can go to that section to get some insights and direction on how you can use it yourself. And then at the end of the guide, we've got 5 additional sections. So the first is just a section of frequently asked questions. So any sort of question you might have, you can go there, and hopefully we answer your question there. We have a set of references and resources about anything from where you find the best financial coaching program to information about the FDIC's Money Smart curriculum. And so you can always click there to access a range of references and resources, both national resources and some more regional ones. We also have 4 appendices that have specific information. So one of those appendices, Appendix C, has a list of more than 100 different financial capability outcomes that you could use when figuring out what the goal of your work will be. We have one of the appendices, Appendix D, is a checklist of characteristics for a successful partnership. So we've got a lot of different resources in the appendix you can access. We've also got a one-stop tool shop. So anytime you want to download one of the tools, you can just click on this icon, and it'll take you to a list of all 13 tools, but also a place to download each of the tools individually in any sort of format you want. And finally, at the end of the guide, we've got an acknowledgement section. So as I mentioned, the guide is field-tested. We worked with a couple dozen organizations around the country to develop it and provide input on it and make sure that what we were developing was really helpful. And so this section really just acknowledges the time they took in both trying out the draft version of these tools and also on providing some really thoughtful feedback that helped us to develop what we hope is a very practical tool.
Great.
So now I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Corey. We'd like to take this moment before we move on to kind of talking more about how that relates to child welfare to ask your next polling question, and that is, which financial capability services are most needed by the youth, and I think impliedly is that you work with or interact with. And the options are incentivized savings programs, financial education, credit building, and asset ownership programs, all things that Corey mentioned a little bit earlier on in the presentation. So if you guys could take a few minutes to go ahead and fill out your choice for that. And I'll take that downtime to remind you of a couple of things. Again, Corey mentioned a little bit ago that in your GoToWebinar panel on the right side of your screen, you should notice a section for handouts, in which there is a 2-page PDF on building financial capability, which we've uploaded for you, kind of a 2-pager of the information that Corey just shared with you. And then we also have already made available a PDF handout of the slides for this webinar. So in case, as we here in a little bit after our next section, when we move into question and answers, you'd like to kind of review any of the information. So just wanted to give you guys a reminder of that. And do we have the results of our poll? Awesome. So 15% of you said incentivized savings program, 65% said financial education, 15% credit building, and 5% asset ownership programs. I think that's really great. I think that we'll have plenty of time to discuss those questions and answers. Those of you who have any questions for Corey or Lynn after we finish her section on any of those, we should have plenty of time for you to ask those specific questions. And so with that, I'd like to just turn it over to Lynn Wright, Program Area Advisor for the Center for States, who's going to talk a little bit more about child welfare.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon and good morning for some of you. I have had the opportunity to visit this guide for some time now and review it, and I find it to be very thorough, and it's very adaptable to fit with the child welfare field to help increase the agency capacity to be deliberate and structured in their approach to ensure that youth and young adults in foster care receive comprehensive exposure to the array of necessary tools and services, also financial education, information, and to make sure that the education pieces are reinforced through experiential learning opportunities, which is very, very important, very key to this. And that comes into play with the new normalcy provisions and also for extended foster care, which we'll get to in a moment. But importantly about adapting these kinds of tools is to consider the context of the foster care environment. And many of the participants here on this webinar are well aware of the distinct challenges that youth in foster care face in relation to the general youth population in considering building individual capacity to manage financial matters, just because of the environment inherent in the foster care experience. Particularly around access to mainstream financial services, which goes beyond an institution offering youth-friendly services, but has to be considerate of child welfare agencies that have the special task to overcome barriers that result from the client, in this case youth and young adults in foster care, being removed from a home and having the state as their custodian or be in a custodian-type role. Financial socialization is a challenge for these young folks. They may have had frequent changes of placement and maybe have not strongly developed their attitude or their perception about money and how they perceive managing their finances. So they'll need to, I think, bring in care providers to really look at how they are sharing their information and how they're on a daily basis talking about money and using these as financial capability learning opportunities in the home. Foster youth typically have a lot of changes in placement, which not only affects their socialization, but also giving different addresses that might be challenging to provide information to financial institutions when they're setting up accounts. Many banks, really, it's a myth that they require the documents, original documents, to verify a youth's identity, and even a parent or a teacher can vouch for the person's identity. And you can get very creative about the permanent addresses and overcome a lot of these challenges. But those are things you need to consider when you're going through this guide and you're building your strategy and adapting them and training your foster parents and your congregate care providers. And that really covers, I would say, a parental responsibility. It's the relationship that comes into play with a parent. They are in the role of, the agency is in the role of a parent, as well as those providing direct foster care to the young person. So you really need to consider whether the parents, the foster parents, are willing to be the custodian of the accounts, or if that needs to be in the state, in the hands of the state. And that's oftentimes referred to the legal counsel of the department, or just up to, depending on if the child or the young person has a pretty stable placement or relationship with their parents that they're living with. I think next, yes, thank you. Credit history is a real challenge for young people in foster care, more so than the average youth, in that they are particularly vulnerable for ID theft. And with all of the documents that are passed around and go from different agencies and different homes, aside from perhaps even family members needing to or feeling like they need to use their young person's identity to open up their own accounts and to get utilities and apartments, they're particularly vulnerable to ID theft. And this is one of the areas that has come to fruition finally, and that the federal requirements are asking states to make sure that they get the credit history for every youth, now beginning with age 14. So this is one of the areas that is required of states to do, and you can certainly integrate your financial capability strategies into getting your credit history reports for each youth. The main intent of this, when it came out, was to ensure that every youth left foster care with a clean slate and didn't have a credit history. But there are other considerations, too, and that is to not get wrapped up in the struggles that states have in trying to administer getting the reports, and take it a step further to really make it a deliberate plan to use the credit history and the credit report to review with a young person, to use it as a learning tool, to teach them to understand how to interpret a credit report and how it really impacts the rest of their life, and how they can start to clean that up and develop a credit history that can help them in the future. Another consideration is real-life experiential learning. All of the education and financial literacy opportunities that you can bring to your young person by reaching out into the community and getting some of the organizations, nonprofits, to come and provide classes not only to staff but to the young people themselves about the importance of saving and building a credit history. But young people need to have the experience of managing money themselves. That is a real challenge for young people in foster care when getting a job and having revenue that comes in that they can actually manage. So I think one area that really needs to be deliberate is when you have young people that are particularly challenged in gaining employment and keeping employment, is to be creative about how you can use different scenarios to have the young person keep accounts, even if they're imaginary, but to set goals and to keep an account of expenses that they would use them for, and to give them allowances to where they're able to go out into the community and make expenditures and really have a hands-on experience and learn how to manage the money. Setting goals for the young people, it's really important that youth in foster care be given an extra opportunity to be able to make decisions where they may not have had the opportunity in the past. They've been, a lot of decisions are made for them in their life, and to be able to create some goals and explore some of their own interests and have an adult or another person that they can relate to, a mentor, be able to really help pull out some ideas and help them explore some of the goals that they might have so that they can be more invested in building assets and creating a savings. It's really important to understand where they are in their learning I think we might want to go on to the next tab. Yes, that's in developing their personal plans and engaging them in creating their plan and finding out what their interests are. It's also very helpful to keep in mind that every young person often has unrealistic goals about what they want and how those could be attained. So it's important to encourage them to talk it through and really see if what's realistic and what can they change and what is their commitment to stick with it and be able to accomplish their goals. And they can start small. It doesn't have to be large savings, asset building plans and matched savings plans, which a lot of states have started looking into. Some are very successful with them. But it can also be small allowance. If they get in the habit and start building good money habits young, it doesn't have to be a matched savings plan. We will, though, however, have some on the next webinar, some states share with us their success around these ideas. Next. Extension of foster care is a very important area when you're talking about young people and youth having the ability to get out into the world and have age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate experiences. The consideration for young people who have returned or decided to remain in foster care beyond the age of 18, their interests and their needs are going to need to be reflected in their assessments and in the strategies that you use to help them access the community resources. Next. And financial education, again, I think the point to keep in mind is when you're trying to determine who can deliver the financial education, do you have staff equipped to be able to share with foster parents and with young people, or do you need to reach out to the community and bring in experts to help? Remember that there are experts and that those that aren't financially educated or comfortable and completely financially literate, as caseworkers and as foster parents and care providers, they too will need to experience some of the lessons and the educational opportunities that are in the community. So in planning this, it is part of the independent living skills, help the foster parents and the caseworkers be able to understand enough to at least know the core concepts to be able to share with the young person and get the young person on the right track, and know who to access in the community who can really deliver these services and free up the time that caseworkers need. Okay, and finally, again, tailoring your financial services. This is an excellent guide to be able to provide a structured strategy to integrate your services into the independent living skills, into transition planning, involve your court systems, and really tailor your financial services to the needs of your staff, your care providers, and your new life skills assessments to be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate as early as age 14 on up to those who are young adults. We hope that you will join us again in a couple of weeks when we can bring some states to share what they are doing around financial education and integrating these into their existing programs and services, and how they are very comprehensive in their approach. So as more states are demonstrating the increased attention to building the knowledge and skills and assets for young people in foster care, you have a real opportunity to capitalize on this increased knowledge. And I hope that you'll join us in a couple of weeks and that you'll be able to take advantage of this guide that Corey has presented for us. So I'm going to turn it back over to Matt Hudson.
Hi, Lynn. Thanks so much. I think it's really great information from both our presenters. I've had the extreme benefit and pleasure of being able to put this webinar together with both of them over the last few weeks, and I think it's just so much great information. I hope that you guys have thought so too. So now that we have really plenty of time for our question and answer period, and I think we're going to do this in two ways. On the GoToWebinar panel on the right of your screen, or if you're inside of the presentation, you should also notice both a chat feature and a question feature. So if anyone wants to just type in their questions, I will read them aloud and facilitate them with both Corey and Lynn, or whomever you want the question addressed to. We also have an operator who can facilitate you asking your question out loud if you'd like to, in which case I would recommend just using the raise your hand feature of your panel so that we know that you might want to speak. But I already have a few questions in our questions panel, so I'll go ahead and just bring those out to Corey and Lynn right now. As I mentioned, feel free to just type them in as you have them, and I'll read them off. So Corey and Lynn, maybe both of you, and you may not know, but the first question is worded to participants, but I'll read it to you guys. Are you aware of match savings programs? And so I was wondering, Corey, if maybe you could talk about, I think you called them individual development accounts as they relate to some of the work that you've done.
Yep.
Yeah, and so can you talk about maybe the difference between those and other match savings, or if those are what people typically think of with match savings programs?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think generally when we talk about individual development accounts, we're talking about match savings accounts. I think we use the term match savings accounts to apply more broadly than individual development accounts. So, for example, if you've ever heard the term children's savings accounts, they're different from individual development accounts because they're match savings programs for kids, whereas generally IDA programs or individual development account programs are match savings programs for older youth or for adults. But generally, I mean, you can use the terms match savings account program or individual development account program interchangeably because they really are the same thing. And if you look at Appendix A in the guide, we've got a list of the 10 different financial capability services I mentioned, and one of those was incentivized savings programs. And that's where we talk a lot about match savings programs, including both individual development account programs as well as children's savings account programs, and then other kind of flexible use incentivized savings programs. So I encourage you to check out Appendix A of the guide to learn a little bit more about the different types of services.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any experience or knowledge, say, of how states might have used, and this is, I guess, either to Corey or Lynn, states working with their youth in care, or maybe just even disadvantaged youth that have been able to set up programs like that?
I'll go first, and then Lynn, any experience or exposure you have is great. I have heard about, I know a couple of different organizations around the country have used match savings programs to help youth transitioning out of care. They've also used like Chafee funds and others to help youth who are transitioning out of care. So we have seen it done. Actually, if you go to the AFI Resource Center, AFI Resources, I think it's idaresources.gov, there's a specific tab on the right side about match savings programs for youth transitioning out of care, and so I encourage you to check that out for more specifics. In terms of the state level, I know there are some statewide match savings programs. I'm not sure how many of them are specifically provided to youth transitioning out of care, but Lynn, I don't know if you have any specific knowledge of those.
Well, right off hand, what comes to mind is the D.C. area has a program where they have a match savings plan, and we're hopefully going to have someone from that state share a little bit about their program on the next webinar.
Great. What about, Lynn, are you aware of with D.C. if they have policy that's written in, from like a state level, or if that's is like a community-based agency that runs it? And then I would pose the same question to Corey for this person who's asking is, well, how have you seen it written in policy so that it's something that other states could replicate?
Not in policy, not in the child welfare policy. No, but it's a special program, and a nonprofit is partnered with them.
Yeah, and I don't know if any specific policies related to state agencies managing IDA programs for youth transitioning out of care. I don't know if any specific policies off the top of my head, but if I come across any, I'll definitely share them with you, Matt, so you can share it in the follow-up for this webinar.
Awesome, that'd be great. And the next question is somewhat similar, but it relates to states that with savings kind of initiatives for specific populations like SSI, SSD, which is Social Security benefits, and as well as veterans. So are you aware of any specific programs that relate with those two? Because it's kind of an integrated state policy issue there where because sometimes the match savings program might allow the youth to gain enough money to where it would remove some of the amount that they're able to draw through SSI benefits, especially after the age of 18 and stuff like that. So have you run into any cross policies or programs that have dealt with that?
So the ABLE Act, ABLE Act, was passed either earlier this year or last year. I think it's actually last year in 2014, which actually specifically is intended to, I think, protect some of the savings of people who have disabilities. And so I would recommend checking out the specific information about that act because I think it's intended to help people who are receiving SSI and SSDI establish savings. In terms of specific policies, I mean, that's the big one that I know about. And then the National Disabilities Institute is a great resource. They do training and technical assistance on they have a specific arm that does economic security work for people with disabilities, and so I recommend checking them out. So the National Disability Institute and then the ABLE Act that was passed last year have information both about policies related to helping people on SSI and SSDI save, but also specific strategies that different organizations or programs have used.
Yeah, and I would add to the person who asked that, too, is I think that in contacting states that might have policies related to foster care and SSI, that even if they're not related specifically to the match savings program, I know that, for instance, California has a really well-developed SSI policy that relates to their extended foster care. So basically what happens when a youth who might be receiving SSI benefits ages out of foster care and then wants to reenter, and how they can essentially not let the Title 40 money that comes in for extended foster care impact what they're able to draw down from SSI. So I think some of it might be just even finding base policies for those disability programs and then seeing what might be what you might be able to accommodate using the match savings. And so obviously feel free to contact me if you would like some more information about that. Our next question, and this is again I think up to either or both Corey and Lynn, is someone wants to know, is there a cap on the percentage of Chafee funds that could be used for a match savings program? And Lynn, that might be more of a question for you, but Corey, if you have any experience with that.
From what I have seen, it's been more of an issue of not capping off the Chafee funds, but whoever is matching the savings generally has a lower cap. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're dealing with. But I haven't had a state that has actually come across having the cap too low from the Chafee funds. It has to, of course, it depends on what it is used for. And some of the match savings are limiting the use of the funds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that also is probably a good question for at the very end of the webinar, I'll be giving you all the contact information for myself and Corey and Lynn, but also for our ICF counterparts with the Office of Community Sports and Children's Bureau. And so I think probably the best person to ask regarding Chafee limitations is Catherine Heath. So you can either use her contact information at the end of this webinar, or you can email me and ask me to forward it on to her, and she can, I presume she could give you the most definitive answer on that. We got a follow-up question about the SSI issue. It says AFI, and that's I'm assuming that you mean the Assets for Independence, which is programs through CFED. AFI accounts currently do not allow persons receiving SSI to save any portion of their disability check towards their AFI IDA. Is anyone aware if this will change? And I presume, Corey, you'd be the best person to answer that.
Yeah, so I don't specifically know the answer to that question. The Assets for Independence program is actually run through the Office of Community Services. And so at the end, I know we have contact information for both myself and Gretchen Lehman. That's something I can look into. So if you can, Matt, just send me that question afterward and the contact information for the person who asked it, I can forward that on to the Office of Community Services and get answers. Because we provide, the CFED runs the training and technical assistance for the AFI program. So we work with the Office of Community Services, but they're really the best ones to answer those kinds of policy questions.
Mm-hmm. And I can probably presume that there are more of our participants that are interested in the answer to that question.
Yeah. So very good question. So to both of you who asked those questions about that we said we'd need to pass on, it's just because when we're dealing with the grant-funded stuff, the best people to ask are those who are closer to the policy and administrative level. Are there any other questions? I'm seeing any at the moment. Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll start moving on with the next information, and if a question pops up, I'll go ahead and still read it. So we won't necessarily close the ability to ask questions, but we will move on with some of the slide information. So as Lynn mentioned during her piece of the presentation, this is actually just part one of a part two webinar. So the focus of this webinar relating to financial capability had a lot to do with the introduction to that planning guide that CFED had developed, and we hope that that's very useful for you and that you'll contact us if you have any more questions about how to use that or how it can integrate. Our next webinar is going to focus more specifically on financial programs for youth and child welfare, and so we'll be looking to have a couple of states present on programs that they've already have that have allowed their youth to participate in kind of a variety of the opportunities to gain financial capability that we spoke of, as well as also a little bit more information around how these things affect youth and child welfare generally. We don't have a catchy title yet, so you will get that when we have the registration ready for the next email, and I promise it'll be really good. We don't have that as of yet, so you'll get more information soon. However, we do know the date and time. The date will be December 17th. That's a Thursday, December 17th, 2015. We tried to not get it too close to Christmas for you guys, and but that seems like an ideal date. And then it'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which is the same time as this webinar. And we will plan to have it be 90 minutes, which was also the allotted time for this webinar. So if you guys, in probably a week or two, you can look out for registration for that webinar with details on the presenters and all the information that you should need for that.
And also, Matt, I wonder if we might be able to share the responses to some of the questions that we weren't able to provide answers to today. We might be able to share those at the next webinar and also invite questions in advance of the webinar if some of the participants want to ask a question at registration. We can make that available to them to answer the question or ask their questions in advance so that we can be prepared with some of those answers.
Yeah, that's absolutely something we can do. And so we can include in our registration information, just like where you have to put in your name and your email, we can put an option for you to ask preliminary questions that we can address in the webinar. I think we did a pretty good job, actually, of attempting to answer the questions that came in. But we can reach out with our ACS counterparts at OCS and CB to maybe get some more information on a couple of them, and then we can make sure to try and give more information about those in that next webinar. But yeah, Lynn's absolutely correct. If there's something that maybe you don't have a specific question, but you came into this webinar thinking, oh, I'd like to have gained more information about that, especially if you are working in the child welfare field, either email us separately or when we send out the registration link, ask your question of what you'd like to answer, and we'll try to address those things specifically beforehand. So following that, if you go to the next slide, this is where our contact information is. And so again, for me, Matthew Hudson, I work for the Center for States, and my email is matthew.hudson@icfi.com. That's MATTHEW.HUDSON @ICFI.com. And then, again, Corey Hadimer with the Corporation for Enterprise Development at khadimer@cfed.org, which is KHATTENER @CFED.org. And then Lynn Wright with the Center for States Program Area Advisor at lynn.wright@icfi.com, which is LYNNE.WRIGHT@ICFI.com. And again, we've mentioned several times, any questions, any thoughts, any follow-up, please feel free to contact us. I know for me, I kind of feel like emails are like a competition, and so whoever gets the most in a day wins. So feel free to email me any questions that you may have. And I'm sure Corey and Lynn would enjoy having questions from you as well.
Yeah,
if we're not enough, moving on to the next slide. As we mentioned, Catherine Heath is the FPO for the Children's Bureau over the Center for this area for the Center for States. That's Catherine Heath, Catherine.Heath@acf.hhs.gov. So CATHERENE.HEATH@acf.hh.gov. And then Gretchen Lehman, who is the Office of Community Services. And so, as Corey mentioned, the Office of Community Services who oversees the AFI grant that was mentioned in one of the questions in Corey's explanation. And that's Gretchen.Lehman@acf.hhs.gov. And so that's GRETCHEN.LEHMAN @ACF.hhs.gov. So I still don't see any more questions. And so please feel free to use the contact information I just gave. And also there is you should have just received a link in your chat feature, another bar or another section of your GoToWebinar bar on the right side of your screen. It should have a link that you can take to a survey for this webinar. We would very much appreciate if you would fill that out and let us know how our presenters did, and whether the content was suitable for what you expected and what we could do to improve on them in the future. So you can copy and paste that link into your web browser to go to it. We'll also be sending it out in our follow-up email to all those who are attendees of the webinar afterwards. And again, we would just really appreciate that. So I think that we'll hang on for just a couple of more minutes, but that really concludes the content of the webinar. We thank you very much, both from the Center for States as well as CFED and our ACF partners. We thank you guys very much for coming, and we hope that to hear from you for any follow-up, and we hope that you'll all, most of you, will attend our second webinar. Again, that will be on December 17th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And without any other questions, I think that would conclude this webinar.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude today's conference call. We thank you for your participation, and you may now disconnect.